There are places that used to be packed with visitors, but things changed. Political problems, safety concerns, or shifting trends made people stop going. The beauty and culture are still there, but the tourists are not. Here are 5 countries that were once popular but today stand almost forgotten. Few countries in the world can claim to have monuments as instantly recognizable as Egypt. The Pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, the Valley of the Kings, these are names every traveler knows. For decades, Egypt was at the very center of global tourism. Visitors came in droves, eager to ride camels past the pyramids, sail along the Nile, or relax on the beaches of the Red Sea. Luxor and Aswan were once filled with guided tours, while Sharm el-Sheikh was one of the most popular resort towns anywhere on Earth. But then, things changed. Political instability following the Arab Spring, violent incidents, and an overall perception of insecurity spread through the media. Suddenly, Egypt was no longer on the safe list. Tourists began canceling their trips, airlines cut flights, and once busy resorts emptied out. The country that had thrived on millions of visitors a year saw its numbers collapse almost overnight. Even today, the shadow of that decline lingers. Crowds never fully return to what they once were, despite the fact that Egypt is still one of the most extraordinary places on the planet. The Nile still flows with centuries of history along its banks. The coral reefs of the Red Sea are still among the richest in the world. But the narrative changed, and when tourists left, the country's image shifted dramatically. For those who do make the trip now, the upside is fewer crowds and the chance to experience Egypt's wonders more intimately. Yet Egypt remains a clear example of how quickly a tourism powerhouse can be abandoned. For years, Sri Lanka was described as a rising star in global travel, a small island but packed with diversity that larger countries could only dream of. From the golden beaches of the south coast to misty tea plantations in the hill country, to safaris where elephants and leopards roam wild, it had everything. Culture, nature, history, and adventure, all within a few hours' drive. Word spread fast, and suddenly, Sri Lanka was topping travel lists everywhere. But just as quickly as it rose, Sri Lanka's tourism collapsed. First came the devastating Easter Sunday attacks in 2019, which shook the country and scared away visitors almost immediately. Hotels that had been fully booked found themselves empty. Then, as Sri Lanka was beginning to recover, the pandemic hit and the global tourism industry froze. And if that wasn't enough, the country soon faced one of the worst economic crises in its history. Fuel shortages, protests, and headlines of chaos turned what was once a dream island into a place most people were warned not to visit. Yet what's remarkable is how much of Sri Lanka's beauty remained untouched by all of this. The ruins of ancient cities like Polonnaruwa and Anuradhapura still stand in quiet dignity. The beaches at Marisa and Unawatuna still see waves roll in. Yala National Park still echoes with the calls of wildlife. Tourists may have left, but Sri Lanka hasn't lost what made it special in the first place. In fact, for the few who continue to go, it feels like rediscovering a secret. An island that has everything, but none of the overwhelming crowds. The story of Sri Lanka is proof that even paradise can be abandoned if outside events reshape how people see it. There was a time when Ukraine was just beginning to find its place on the global travel map. Cities like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa were attracting more and more visitors, fascinated by their mix of history, architecture, and culture. Kyiv with its golden domes, Lviv with its charming cobblestone streets and cafe culture, Odessa with its Black Sea coastline. Ukraine had all the ingredients of an emerging European destination. Adventure travelers also began exploring the Carpathian Mountains, while Chernobyl tours became strangely popular for those looking for something unusual. But then came war. The 2014 conflict already scared away many, but it was the full-scale invasion in 2022 that shut tourism down almost entirely. Ukraine, once an up-and-coming destination, was suddenly a no-go zone. Airports closed, cities under attack, landmarks damaged or destroyed. For tourists, it was no longer about choosing not to go. It simply became impossible. The country that had been building momentum as a cultural and historical gem vanished from the travel radar almost overnight. And yet, Ukraine's spirit remains. The resilience of its people, the beauty of its cities, and the richness of its culture are still there. One day, when peace returns, Ukraine may see a new wave of tourism unlike anything before, not just for its attractions, but as a symbol of survival and pride. Not long ago, Venezuela was considered one of the crown jewels of South America. The country had it all: Caribbean beaches lined with palm trees, snow-capped peaks in the Andes, vast plains filled with wildlife, and of course, Angel Falls, the highest waterfall in the world, plunging more than half a mile straight down. Backpackers loved the adventure. Cruise ships stopped at its ports, and travelers from all over the world came to experience a country bursting with natural beauty. But today, Venezuela is barely on the map for international tourism. Years of political instability, economic collapse, and security concerns have pushed visitors away. Headlines about shortages, violence, and unrest replaced images of beaches and waterfalls. What was once a promising tourism hotspot became a country people were told to avoid at all costs. Airlines cut routes, tour companies shut down, and entire regions that once thrived on visitors saw tourism vanish completely. The tragedy is that the landscapes didn't disappear. Canama National Park is still there with its strange tabletop mountains and roaring waterfalls. Los Roques Archipelago still offers some of the most stunning turquoise waters in the Caribbean. The Andes still stretch across the western part of the country. But the world moved on, and Venezuela's tourism industry was abandoned. Those few who make the trip today often describe it as one of the most beautiful yet challenging travel experiences in the world. A country overflowing with potential, locked behind barriers of politics and crisis. For many Europeans, Tunisia was once the perfect holiday escape. Just a short flight from major cities, it offered golden beaches, warm weather, and affordable resorts. Package holidays filled the coastline with travelers every summer. Beyond the beach, Tunisia offered so much more. Roman ruins like El Jem, the ancient Medina of Tunis, and dramatic desert landscapes that even became filming locations for Star Wars. It was a mix of history, culture, and relaxation, all wrapped into one. But Tunisia's tourism story also changed suddenly. After the Arab Spring and a series of terrorist attacks that targeted tourist areas, international visitors fled. Resorts that had once been bustling with families from Europe sat half empty. Tour operators removed Tunisia from their catalogs, and for many years it was simply considered too risky to visit. The impact on the country's economy was devastating, as tourism had been one of its biggest industries. In recent years, Tunisia has slowly tried to recover. Some tourists are returning, but the crowds of the past never fully came back. For many, Tunisia remains associated with instability, even though its Roman ruins are still just as spectacular. Its desert sunsets just as breathtaking, and its beaches just as inviting. It's another clear example of how quickly a country can be abandoned when fear outweighs fascination. These 5 countries show how fast tourism can change. Crowds can vanish, but the beauty never does. The pyramids are still there, the waterfalls still fall, and the beaches are still just as stunning. Sometimes, the most amazing places are the ones people have forgotten. Which of these would you still visit? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more travel content.